Jill Mastroianni is a Tennessee licensed estate planning attorney. She's also the host of the Readiness podcast, where she simplifies the often complex world of estate planning to educate listeners and provide practical action steps. She's also the creator of the Readiness Playbook, which is a hands-on workbook. It's a super exhaustive hands-on workbook, covers all the bases that essentially helps you create a guide that in the event of your death has every answer your family may need in order to carry on. Jill, welcome to the Dying to Know More podcast. I'm so excited to finally be chatting with you.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, fun fact, Jill has these yard signs around town, and my friend, shout out to Mindy, spotted one and said, she sent me a picture of it, and she said, "You've got to talk to this gal." And I was like, okay. And so here we are. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Old school marketing.
Yes,
the
it works.
Yard sign.
It totally works. And they're really fun too. So, all right. So let's just dig right in. On your bio page, you say that both your practice and your podcast exist to, quote, make complex decisions easier, reduce future conflict, and help families move forward with confidence. When did you realize that facet, kind of creating that podcast to reach a broader audience, was important to you?
It was after I left large firm practice where I felt like the client's needs were not always front and center. The firm I was at had been acquired by a much larger firm. And, there are all those sorts of growing pains that come with that. And one of the pain points I felt was maybe sort of a lack of connection with the client and making sure that the client really understood what was happening and, that everything was consistent with their goals. And so I decided that one way to provide that to clients or even non-clients was to offer it through a free podcast that anybody could assume in the hope that, it would help people wherever they are in making their estate planning decisions.
Yeah. Well, the topics you cover are like things that you don't even know you need to know about. So it's incredibly insightful. You gave a stat in one of your podcast episodes that 70% of Americans have no plan in place regarding their death, which seems incredibly high. But does that mean they have like nothing in place, or they just don't have like a completely buttoned up estate plan?
That they don't have anything in place.
Okay.
And I think that while it sounds surprising, maybe it's not, because estate planning is one of those things that really feels overwhelming, and there doesn't feel like there's a deadline to it. How many people don't file their taxes until on extension or at the very last minute? And that's because they have to. There's a penalty if they don't. But we don't see that death deadline looming. And so it's hard to feel like we should prepare for it.
So when we talk about estate planning and getting our affairs in order, like what are the actual components of like a perfectly planned estate?
So I think in terms of estate planning documents, ones that people often don't think about are the documents you need while you're still alive. So a healthcare power of attorney document where you name someone to make decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. A healthcare advance directive, basically saying what you want to happen in various end of life situations. A financial power of attorney who's going to make financial decisions if you can't make them. And by the way, the healthcare documents, the healthcare power of attorney and advance directive, that's available for free through the state of Tennessee. So you don't need to pay anybody to get that.
Is it that way in every state or just Tennessee?
It is that way in every state. Yeah. There's a link that I provide on my website where people can go there, and I think it's caring.com or something like that, caring info. I can give it to you, where people can go and download a document for their state specific healthcare documents. And then I would also say a will is a document that I struggle to say everybody should have, because not necessarily everybody should have it. A will controls your probate assets, and it depends on whether you have any or not. So if you own everything jointly with a spouse, it's going to pass to the spouse when you die. But if you have assets in your individual name, that's where you need to think about, is there a way to name a beneficiary, perhaps, a payable on death, or do I need to get a will? And of course, a will is good even if you own everything jointly with your spouse, because what if your spouse dies before you, if you die in an accident together? But I also acknowledge that estate planning documents can be quite pricey. So
Yes.
trying to prioritize the expenses in your life is also something that people are thinking about.
Okay, so based solely on what you just answered, I have two questions. When it comes to powers of attorney, power of attorneys, I don't know what the proper phrasing
Powers.
is, and people to, what are the qualities you're looking for when it's time to select somebody to play that role in your life? Are there certain, I mean, because often like older people might pick an adult child, but what if
Mhm.
there's siblings, and then how do you pick? Like, what are you looking for in somebody in that role?
Yeah, so I think you're looking for somebody who doesn't get easily overwhelmed and is very
Okay.
task oriented. You don't
Okay.
want somebody who's going to let a pile of papers, just stack up on their desk and not do anything about it. So
Hmm.
whether someone knows how to take care of finances themselves, or can ask somebody who's actually going to get the job done, and
Okay.
will not, in a situation where you cannot take care of yourself, be too overwhelmed by grief to actually deal with it.
Okay.
When I was younger, before I was married, I named my dad. He was still relatively young and I knew he could do it. Now I've named my husband and a close friend behind him to take care
Okay.
of those decisions. And then a
So
lot of
those
times, go ahead.
that person may change.
Oh, of course it will
Yeah.
change,
Okay.
right? And especially for the documents that you can do yourself without an attorney, like the healthcare documents,
Hmm.
just change them when that changes. I would hate
Yeah.
to have somebody not fill those documents out because they don't feel like they 100% know what they should be doing. Just
Yeah.
fill it out with what feels right for today and change it tomorrow if it needs to be changed.
Okay. And then back to the other question I had, which I've actually got kind of a rapid fire at later in my questions. There's so many terms around estate planning that the average person doesn't know. So
Mhm.
probate. What is probate?
It's a court supervised administrative process for distributing assets that you owned in your individual name to people who are left behind.
It always seems like people are like, you don't want the will to go to probate. Is that true? Is that not true? If so, why would we not? Like, what are the pros
It's
and cons?
it's sometimes true and it's sometimes not true. I try
Okay.
to stay away from statements like always or never, just
Yeah.
generally in life, because usually there are nuances, and just like there are nuances in everyday life, there are nuances with regards to probate. In Tennessee, I do not find the process to be very difficult. I don't often recommend that a client tries to avoid probate, because most likely the client is never going to avoid probate. And what I mean by avoiding probate is maybe titling all their assets in the name of something called a revocable living trust, or naming beneficiaries, or payable on death transfers. There's always going to be something left over that the client forgot that they bought after they did their estate planning. And I don't, in most circumstances, feel like it's worth the effort to try and avoid probate. In states like California, where the attorney and the executor are being paid based on the value of the estate, that can be a really big deal, especially if you own real property, because the value that they're basing that off is not the value with the mortgage or decreased by the
Mm,
mortgage. It's just the full fair market value. So you could end up paying quite a bit in a state like California. And also, I have heard, though I've not done probates in California, that it's rather long and arduous.
okay. All right. Well, we'll get back because you mentioned the revocable or what? How did you pronounce it?
People say
Revocable.
it different ways. I call it revocable. Some people
Okay.
say revocable. I
Okay.
think they're both correct.
Okay. All right. We'll get back to that because I do have more questions on that later on as well. One topic you've covered on your podcast is a service that you offer in your practice that I don't think people maybe think about, which is special needs estate planning. And I know you've got a brother, Dan, who has Down syndrome, so I think that's probably a very near and dear to your heart topic. What how does special needs estate planning differ from traditional estate planning?
Well, if you have an individual in your family who is receiving something called means tested government benefits, then you want to make sure that you don't leave any assets to that individual outright. So, for example, if I wanted to make sure that my brother were provided for, and let's say give him $100,000 if I die
Mhm.
before him, if I give that $100,000 to him directly, then he's going to be disqualified from those
Mhm.
government benefits that he's receiving because now he has too much money to
Gotcha.
qualify for them. If I
Okay.
put those assets into a special type of trust with very specific language called the special needs trust, then he can get the benefit of that money if he needs it
Okay.
without disqualifying him from government benefits. And government benefits is a really big deal. Some people think, well, if he's got $100,000, he doesn't need it. Well, he
Right.
really does need health insurance, and he's pretty much uninsurable
Right.
without that government coverage.
Okay. So if somebody has just had a child or just learned that their child has special needs, what's like the must do, get it done yesterday move they need to make in terms of this?
Well, I think if you are a parent with a young child with special needs,
Mhm.
you I worry about how expensive special needs estate planning can be, especially for a younger couple with young kids. You
Okay.
want to be very careful. I mean, we did have a situation a while ago when I was practicing where a young couple had a child with Down syndrome.
Hmm.
One half of the couple died, you know, with no really known cause in his 30s. And he had owned a bunch of assets in his individual name. At that
Hmm.
point in Tennessee, if you don't have a will, and he did not even have a will, the assets are divided among your wife and your children. So that child who had special needs then took those assets outright. And we had difficulty because of the disqualification from means tested benefits. So, at the very least, I would make sure that you have a will that's giving everything to your spouse if
Okay.
you have a spouse, because I think sometimes it's hard to be perfect. And
Right.
when people wait to do something because they need it to be perfect, they often don't do anything at all. Well, it's
Yeah.
far more likely that one spouse will die at a young age than for both spouses to die at a young age.
Right.
So make sure you're at least protecting that surviving spouse. And of course, if you can put a special needs trust in there in the event that you're both gone, do that. That's great. But if you can't afford it, do the next best thing.
Okay. I think to your point, people it is an overwhelming topic, thinking of planning your estate or planning for your death or whatever. And I think the natural tendency is to just kind of, I'll take care of it later. I'll take care of it later. But that's the beauty of what you're offering with your podcast and with your playbook, is just like the bite size ability to chomp off bite sized pieces. You know what I mean? Which
Mhm.
ultimately leads you closer to the finish line, which I think is the goal. Um, so let's get to the Death Readiness Playbook, which
Oh,
is massive and extensive and exhaustive. I mean by exhaustive, you've exhausted every topic, which is fascinating. You call the first chapter the dossier, and it really is. It's like a legitimate Bible that you can create and hand off. How long did that take you? How long did it take you to create the entire playbook? First
well,
off, let's start there.
I didn't create it all on my own. So all of the graphics were done by my sister-in-law. And
Okay.
I know it can seem like maybe that's not an important part of the book, but I think it's the most important part because she makes it look visually attractive, and she has a way of putting concepts that maybe are difficult to understand into a visual representation that
Mm-hmm.
makes things easier to
Mm-hmm.
understand. Or else it could be just a lot of black and white text that looks like blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
wants that.
Yeah.
So I had actually had a listener from the podcast reach out and said she really wanted a book like this. And wouldn't it be great if she could give it to people as a holiday gift? So she let me know that the end of December. And then I had it. I mean, the end of November, sorry, the end of November. And then I had it ready by the end of December for people
Oh
who
my
wanted to give it as
goodness.
holiday gifts. But it was many, many hours of working during that 1 month period.
So talk about what I guess in particular, explain for listeners what's included in the dossier part, and then explain. I'd like to know like what you think are the most crucial components of the dossier, like just in your opinion.
So the dossier is really all the important documents that you have on your family, whether it's your birth certificates, your passports, your life insurance policies, your estate planning documents, all those things in one place. And the reason that's so important is because when someone dies, the need for all of this information is immediate, and you
Mm-hmm.
often have no idea where to find it.
Right.
And my husband and I had moved from Nashville to Michigan, and I was putting together all the information on the dossier for our family to have in one place because I do like to practice what I preach. And he had our kids' passports like at the very back of some backpack that I would have never known to look in, along with their birth certificates. And, that's people have stuff, they know where it is, but it's the last place on earth you would ever look for it. So
Right.
I think that's why it's so important, because the last thing we want is a scavenger hunt when we need information immediately.
Right. And so in the dossier, what are the most crucial components of that?
The most crucial, they're all important, but I would
Yes.
say, for your estate planning documents, to have your like healthcare power of attorney and your financial power of attorney readily accessible, because that's when somebody is still living. That is far more urgent than dealing with something after somebody has died.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like to put along with the healthcare power of attorney, and I update mine annually, there's like a health information sheet. I forget what I actually called it. I think I called it vitals in the playbook, where you list, your doctors, your medications, any other relevant health information, so that if you're in an accident, your
Mm,
family's not scrambling to figure out all this medical information that you need to hand over to the doctors immediately. It's just
yeah.
all in that one place. So, yeah, I think the information that you need while you're living is more important than the information that would be needed after you're gone.
Okay. Is there anything that you've thought of since it published that you're like, God, how did I forget that? Or, or are you
Well,
planning to reprint?
I am going to reprint because I'm almost out. I think I've
Okay.
only got 4 books left. I have a
Oh,
big
wow.
shipment going out today. And so but I purposely didn't print like a whole ton of books each
Right.
time I printed. This is just my second printing that I've gone through, because I know that things, like I'll see things that I want to update. And I did update things in the second book that weren't in the first book.
Okay.
Um, I have my husband fill out the various sort of information sheets in the workbook that for the information he has that I don't have. And he has told me that he would like to make some edits for future users. So
Yeah.
I don't know what those are, but when I go to reprint, I'll be making those changes, because sometimes you don't know until you're actually like in the thick of using something. Oh, well, it would be good if we also had this information, or maybe phrased it a different way.
Right. I also like to your point about the graphics, and you're right that it is absolutely a better experience than just having a sea of text. But I really like the way that you explain kind of the why behind certain things. I think it kind of helps frame up the entire picture so that, I mean, it's I think in life, it's when you understand why, then it's easier to move forward. And so I think that's a real benefit to the book as well. So um, I just think it's an incredible tool. Um, Slightly off topic, just came into my head because I've got middle-aged brain. I, like last week, got served up on Instagram uh post that this guy was talking about, when you die. What was he talking about? When you die, when your kids, they have like 1 month to pay off your mortgage, the mortgage on the house, or is that true or false?
Well, yes and no. uh, so it depends on what is in your mortgage agreement. So sometimes there is a payable on death clause in your mortgage agreement that causes the mortgage to immediately become due and payable. Now, does your mortgage provider know that you've died if someone keeps paying your mortgage? No. So
Okay.
I'm not saying do anything illegal, but act in a way that's practical. There are
Okay.
some things that you can't deal with right away, so maybe you don't make those things known right away. And maybe the
Okay.
mortgage is one of those things, because the mortgage provider has no reason to call a mortgage that is being paid timely.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's just another internet scam to make some money, I guess. Well, I'm glad I asked a professional. Um, Back to estate planning. What do you think is the number one mistake people make when it comes to estate planning?
I think they listen to what everyone else tells them they need to have without finding out what they need to have on their own for their individual circumstances. Just like you said earlier, there's a lot of people who say you should avoid probate, you have to avoid probate, or you need to put everything in a trust. What does that even mean? I don't know. But
Mhm.
don't fall, victim to all the shoulds and musts. Just do your own thing.
Along those lines, when it comes time, first of all, does everybody need an estate plan? Or is it just like I've always just assumed it's just for the super wealthy. And then only since I started doing this podcast and really digging into this entire space am I learning like most people should. Or I mean, I don't want to all or
Yeah.
nothing it,
So
but
I guess it depends on what you define as an estate plan.
okay.
And just the episode I released last week was, what did I have as my estate plan when I was 30?
Hmm.
When my major holding was student debt and nothing else. I
Yeah.
mean, I certainly didn't have money to pass on to people, but yeah,
Right.
I did have an estate plan. I had financial and healthcare powers of attorney. I
Okay.
had a healthcare advance directive. I named a beneficiary on my retirement account. I did have life insurance and I named a beneficiary on that. So I did things to make sure that the people that I was leaving behind would be okay. Now, I wasn't married at that point. I didn't have kids. My dad was the one that I named on the beneficiary as a beneficiary, but I also told him what I had and what I was doing so that
Hmm.
if something did happen to me, he wasn't going to be doing that scavenger hunt. So do you need a
Yeah.
will and a trust and everything? I don't know. It depends on what you have and what your life
Yeah.
circumstances are, but you do
Okay.
need to make a plan for the day when either you can't take care of yourself or when you're no longer here, because one of those is for sure going to happen and the other one might happen.
Okay. All right. Is there like a most memorable case that you've worked on that kind of exemplified the challenges that arise when people are not prepared for their death?
Um, I would say things found in hoarder situations.
Mm,
When an individual has passed and I don't, suffered from some sort of hoarding disability and what's left behind. Now, I don't know that that's something a person could necessarily control, if that's an illness, but there have certainly been surprising things that we've had to deal with as a
for
result of
example,
that.
like for example?
Um, Deceased pets in a freezer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, something that you probably, and then how do you deal with those deceased pets who, are quite large, very large freezers of deceased animals. So,
Okay. Okay.
you know,
Challenges like that. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. All right. Um, okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, I do want to go back to the kind of rapid fire the topics. What is the difference between a last will and testament and a living will?
I have a podcast episode exactly on that, but I will
Do
tell
you?
you right now as well. Yes,
Okay.
so many people are confused about it, and I
Yes.
don't know why they're named so similarly. But
Okay.
a last will and testament is a written document that distributes your assets that are going to pass through probate to the individuals to whom you wish to have them.
Okay.
A living will is in effect while you're still living. It is essentially a healthcare advance directive. It's a
Okay.
document where you say what you want to happen if you are in a terminal medical condition, whether you wish to donate your organs, whether you wish to be artificially sustained. And that's while you're living. It has no effect once you're dead.
Okay. So, living will and advanced healthcare directive are kind of the same thing?
They're the same thing. Yeah.
Fascinating. Never knew that.
So let's just call it an advanced healthcare directive.
Right.
Makes more
Yes.
sense.
Yes, it does. That's fascinating. What is the difference between a revocable and irrevocable trust?
There's so much that's
There's
different
so much
between
to
them,
cover.
but a revocable living trust is essentially a trust with the main purpose of avoiding probate. You
Okay.
put your assets into that revocable living trust, revocable meaning you can change it whenever you want, but
Okay.
it allows the assets to be titled in a way that avoids probate. There is no tax benefit, there is no creditor benefit. An
Okay.
irrevocable trust is often a type of trust where you are giving up control of certain of your assets, likely making a gift for the benefit of somebody else. And there are tax consequences, sometimes a tax benefit, and there are usually creditor protections as well.
Okay. The difference between power of attorney and executor of the will.
A attorney in fact or an agent under a power of attorney document is the person who's making decisions for you while you're still living. An
Okay.
executor under a will is only making decisions for you after you're dead to distribute your assets, as you said, under your will.
Okay. All right. I've learned so much today.
Oh, great.
So I just have two more questions,
Okay.
and I ask everybody, what has been the single most impactful or transformative experience you've had since you've started? I was going to say started doing this work, but it could be started doing this work or doing your podcast, that has just impacted you greatly.
Well, there have been a lot of big experiences in the last few years. The major being that I lost a job that my family was in the process of relocating for. We had sold our house in Tennessee and we didn't have anywhere to land. We landed in Michigan, I without a job, and I decided to start my own business, this podcast and my own legal practice. And I don't think that I would have had the courage to do that if not for losing my job. So I I think I heard somewhere, maybe it was on the Amy Porterfield show, but if you try to turn the worst thing that's ever happened to you into the best thing that's ever happened to you, you'll turn out okay. And I feel like
Well,
that's what I tried to do there, and so far it's working out okay. Certainly not without its challenges, but it's working okay.
do you feel like you've kind of found your life's work?
I do, and I feel really grateful for that. I had always been the primary earner in our family, and I didn't think I could ever step away and try to do my own thing. I didn't realize how little we needed, how much we could actually take a risk, and how fine everything would turn out. So I'm just kind of glad I was forced into doing it.
That's so awesome. Real quick, what's kind of next for the podcast and the playbook and your practice? Like, do you have kind of a 5-year plan or 10-year plan, or are you just kind of growing organically or what?
Well, I am growing, I guess, organically. That's always sort of part of the process. But I do live in Michigan and I am working on becoming licensed to practice in Michigan also, so that
Hmm,
I'll be licensed in Tennessee and Michigan. And
okay.
I never would have thought that I would be doing that. But I think practicing law on my own and on my own terms is uh, not as scary as I thought it might be. And it's really,
Yeah.
really fulfilling. And I think that sometimes, especially as women get older and get into middle age, there's sort of a lot of messages that we're done, we're over. But starting something new in my mid 40s and discovering that I am quite capable and powerful in my own right, I think
Yeah.
is really encouraging and really good for my teenage daughter to see.
I love that so much. That's so
Thank
exciting, and
you.
I'm excited for you. All right, last question. Are you
Mhm.
afraid to die? Why or why not?
I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid to die with information that's not properly updated. So,
That seems
uh,
on brand. That seems totally on brand.
yeah, most specifically, I worry about my husband, my daughter, and my dogs. And I'm always trying to, I have a stack of my very own information worksheets on my desk, and I'll go through a little bit every night, updating information because I try to make sure they're all updated at least once annually. But if there's a big change, I want to make sure that
Yeah.
it's updated. Like we just changed our insurance, so I want to make sure everybody has that information. So yeah, I'm okay to die. I just want to make sure that everybody is okay when I leave.
That is truly the most on brand answer I've had anybody give me. So that's amazing. All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough, Jill, for being here today. Listeners, I will drop all of Jill's information in the show notes, including the links to her socials, the playbook, her website, and you'll give me the link to the forms that you were talking about, and I can
Yeah,
add that as well.
absolutely.
All right.
Great.
Fantastic. Jill, thank you so much. It has been my pleasure.
Well, thank you very much.
If you like this episode of Dying to Know More, be sure to like and subscribe to never miss another episode.